Rain carved silver veins across the empty bus bench. Streetlights flickered in the downpour like they couldn't decide if they wanted to be seen. He sat there, alone, boots soaked, duffel bag slumped beside him, head low. Then, the sound of footsteps. Not hurried. Not hesitant. Just, wrong. A woman stepped out of the dark. Hood up. Eyes hidden. She placed a bundled baby in his arms, wet, silent, still, and without a word, disappeared into the rain. From the folds of the blanket, a note slipped free. The baby blinked once. Then came her whisper. She said you'd know what to do. In her tiny hand, a silver locket. Cold against his skin. The rain didn't stop. Not really. It just changed shapes. Sometimes it was mist, soft and hesitant. Other times it was loud, drumming against the windshield like it had something to prove. He sat motionless in his truck, parked under the shell of an old gas station awning, holding the child like she might dissolve if he shifted too fast. His heart hadn't stopped racing since the moment the woman vanished into the dark. The baby, Lila, the note had said her name was, hadn't cried. Hadn't made a sound. Just stared, impossibly still. Too still. He pulled the crumpled piece of paper from his pocket, his hands damp from rain and something else, maybe sweat, maybe fear. Her name is Lila. Please keep her safe. They're watching me. Tell her one day, I didn't run. I tried. No signature. No address. Just those words, scrawled in messy ink. Some of it smeared by rain, or tears. He wasn't sure which. He glanced back at the girl. She was maybe a year old, maybe less. Thin. Pale. Her lips slightly parted like she was waiting for something. She stared through the windshield like the world beyond it was too loud to look away from. He gripped the wheel with one hand, the other resting on her tiny back, feeling the rise and fall of breath. Alive. That was something. He'd seen combat. Blood. Screaming. He'd seen grown men shatter under things they couldn't explain. But nothing had ever hit him like this, the weight of her silence. The trust in her stillness. What kind of woman hands her baby to a stranger? What kind of soldier just takes her? He pulled into a 24-hour diner. Lights humming. Neon buzzing. He didn't eat. He just sat in a corner booth, Lila asleep in the seat beside him, the note unfolded like a riddle. He kept rereading it, thinking maybe new words would appear if he blinked long enough. They're watching me. Was it paranoia? Or was someone really after her? And then. Tell her I didn't run. That one cut deep. Too deep. Like it was meant for him. His fingers ran along the crease of the paper. Torn at the edges. Like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. Like someone had written it days ago and couldn't bear to hand it over, until the last moment. He looked at Lila. Still asleep. Her cheek resting against a folded napkin. In her hand, still, the locket. It hadn't left her grasp. He reached for it. Gently. The chain was thin, almost broken. The locket cold. He pressed the tiny clasp. Click. Inside, a photo. Faded. But clear enough. A girl, maybe 17. Long brown hair. Soft eyes. And beside her. A younger version of him. Military fatigues. Arms slung casually around her shoulder. Both smiling. His throat tightened. He didn't remember this photo. Didn't remember her. But there he was. And suddenly the note wasn't from a stranger anymore. He left the diner before dawn. Something about the fluorescent light felt wrong. Too exposed. He drove until the sun began to rise, not that it changed much. The sky was still gray, low and thick, like it was hiding something. Lila stirred in the passenger seat. She didn't cry. She just looked up at him. Eyes round, steady. No fear. No confusion. Just watching. He whispered, "Do you know me?" She blinked. Then reached out and touched the side of his face. Her hand was warm. He felt something break inside him. Not shatter. Just crack. A quiet, dangerous fracture. Back at a motel, he laid her on the bed. Tucked the blanket tighter around her. She hummed, just once. A short, breathy sound. He sat at the tiny desk and opened his laptop. Missing children. Mothers. Abductions. Trafficking. Fugitives. He didn't know what he was looking for. But he couldn't stop. No trace of her. No matching photos. No Lila with her age or face. Nothing. Except a deepening weight that maybe this wasn't new. Maybe this had been happening for a while. To other children. Other mothers. And maybe someone knew he had her. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. He didn't answer. That night, as the TV buzzed soft white noise and Lila clutched the locket to her chest, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. He kept hearing the girl's voice in his head. She said you'd know what to do. But he didn't. He didn't know what to do. He only knew this. He couldn't give her back. Not yet. Not until he knew why the mother chose him. Not until he understood why the photo in the locket had his face. And not until he found out who the hell was watching them, and why. In the stillness of that early morning, as Lila finally slept without twitching, the soldier sat in the corner chair, boots still on, eyes bloodshot. One hand on his pistol. The other holding the note. Folded neatly now. Placed in his chest pocket. Right over his heart. Just in case. Because he was starting to believe. This wasn't just about a baby. This was about a buried truth finally clawing its way out of the dark. The motel sign buzzed like it was tired of being noticed. One of the neon letters had gone dark, leaving only MOEL glowing in red above the door. He asked for a room near the back. Less foot traffic. Fewer questions. The clerk didn't care. Just handed him a rusted key with a tag that read 23B, and went back to whatever war he was losing behind his phone screen. The door stuck. Everything about the room smelled like time had stopped somewhere around 1992. Cigarette smoke and disinfectant. A single bed. A flickering wall lamp. Brown water-stained ceiling tiles that resembled continents on a forgotten map. He locked the door. Double-checked the window latch. Drew the curtains. The silence afterward was too loud. Lila whimpered in his arms, a soft, breathy protest, then went quiet again. Always so quiet. He set her down on the bed and she rolled instinctively toward the center, curling into herself like a memory she didn't want to share. Still holding the locket. He took a long shower. The water barely warm, pressure almost nothing. Still, it felt like it scraped something off his skin, the fear maybe, or the stink of uncertainty. When he stepped out, Lila hadn't moved. Just lay there. Eyes open. Watching the water droplets on his shoulder like they meant something. He moved slowly toward her, towel around his waist, then paused when he noticed her tapping. Her tiny fingers, barely more than twigs, were tapping the mattress in a rhythm. Slow. Deliberate. Tap, 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 tap. He sat on the edge of the bed. "Do you hear something?" he whispered, like he didn't want to interrupt whatever language she was speaking to herself. She didn't respond. Just tapped. Tap, 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 tap. His chest tightened. It reminded him of Morse code. Of nights in foreign deserts when radios went dead and soldiers reverted to knocking messages on fuel tanks. He leaned in. Is that a signal? She stopped tapping. Looked up. Then reached toward the lamp and flicked it off with her tiny fingers. The room plunged into soft shadows. Only then did she whisper, barely audible. No light. No noise. That's what she said. His breath caught. Your mom? He asked, gently. Lila didn't answer. But her eyes flicked toward the locket. Her hand tightened around it. He nodded, as if she'd spoken. They lay in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that stretches, not just fills. He eventually pulled the chair from the corner and set it by the bed. Sat with his hands laced, elbows on knees. He was used to waiting. Long watches. Long silences. But not with a child. Not like this. He studied her. The way she blinked slower than most kids her age. The way she didn't seek warmth or comfort. She just observed. Like she was used to being alone in rooms full of people. He scrolled through his old photos. Military ones. Friends. Bases. One blurry photo from a Christmas years ago, the same fatigues he wore in the locket photo. He zoomed in on the background. A girl. Half in the frame. Holding a paper cup. Smiling at someone off camera. His heart stuttered. Same girl from the locket. Same soft eyes. He pulled out the note again, laid it beside the phone. Tell her one day, I didn't run. I tried. She hadn't run. She'd found him. Somewhere, through whatever hell she'd been through, she remembered him. Trusted him. And now her child was tapping mattress rhythms in a motel room like she'd been trained to hide. He didn't sleep. Lila did. Curled under his army jacket, breathing steady, face softened by sleep in a way that made her seem smaller than ever. He watched the door. Every creak, every hum of the ice machine outside, every car that passed. He kept one hand near his weapon. The other resting gently on the edge of the bed, close enough to Lila's fingers. In the quietest hour of the night, she rolled in her sleep and her hand brushed his. She didn't wake. But her fingers curled instinctively around his. At sunrise, the room was dim gold. He stepped outside briefly, just to check. Sky clear. No movement. No sign of the woman from before. No note on the windshield. No shadows out of place. But his instincts were screaming. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mother handing off her child in a panic. This was planned. She wanted him to have Lila. And someone else wanted that not to happen. He went back inside. Locked the door. Sat at the edge of the bed. Lila stirred again. Eyes opened. Hey, he said softly. She blinked. Then whispered. Are we hiding? His throat caught. He nodded. Yeah. For now. She didn't seem scared. Just certain. Okay, she whispered. And resumed tapping. Tap, 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 tap. The soldier leaned back. Watched her. And in that moment, he realized. She wasn't just a child with a secret. She was the secret. And room 23B was the last quiet place before the truth came knocking. Morning didn't arrive gently. It bled through the motel curtains in a dull smear, yellowed and tired. He sat on the edge of the bed, boots on, back curved like the night had aged him. Lila was still asleep. Arms above her head like a tiny surrender. The locket glimmered faintly in her hand, clenched like something she'd fought to keep. He stared at it. That silver oval, tarnished and old, was more than a trinket. It was a fuse. And he knew it. He reached for it slowly, brushing his fingers along her palm. Her hand twitched, resisting in sleep. But she let go. He clicked it open again. Same photo. The girl. And him. 10 years younger. Arms around her. The kind of smile you don't fake. Soft. Private. But he didn't remember the moment. Didn't remember her name. And that scared him more than anything else. He dug into his old military files. External hard drive from the bottom of his duffel bag. It took 10 minutes to boot up his ancient laptop. 10 more to navigate to the folders that hadn't been touched in years. Photos from his deployment. Group shots. Base parties. Off-duty snapshots in foreign streets. And then he found it, the original version of the photo from the locket. A full frame. The girl was right next to him, arm looped through his, in front of a dusty supply truck. Her name was scrawled in marker on a taped label above the bumper. Emma R. He stared at it for a long time. Emma. Emma Reed. It wasn't just a name. It was his sister's name. The chair screeched as he stood too fast. Lila stirred on the bed, blinking, pulling the blanket to her chin. He dropped to a knee beside her. Lila, he said quietly. Do you know who Emma is? She blinked again. Said nothing. He opened the locket, held it between them. This girl. Her name was Emma. Do you know her? Lila didn't look at the photo. She looked at him. Then nodded, once. His chest tightened. He whispered, was she your mom? She nodded again. Then lifted one finger to her lips. SSSH. He felt his heart drop a floor. Why? Her whisper barely broke the air. Because they're still listening. He turned away, hands braced against the dresser. His reflection stared back from the streaked mirror, hollow-eyed, jaw clenched. Emma. His sister. Gone without a word nearly 8 years ago. The family had stopped speaking about it. Rumors of drugs. Running away. A boyfriend. A breakdown. But he'd never believed it. She wasn't that kind of runaway. She was the kind who left notes, returned borrowed books, made the bed even in hotel rooms. But she vanished. And now, this child. Her daughter. His niece. Dropped into his arms by a stranger, holding a photo he didn't remember taking. He sat back down beside Lila, trying to steady his breathing. She reached for the locket again. He let her take it. Did your mom say anything about me? He asked, cautiously. Lila nodded. Said you were safe. The lump in his throat grew. Did she? Where is she now, Lila? She paused. Then whispered, she said if the wrong people came first, she'd go where I couldn't follow. His eyes burned. She said, she might disappear. But that it's not running. Not like before. She held up the locket. She said you'd remember. He stood. Began pacing the room. She's alive, he whispered to himself. She has to be. Or, she had been. Long enough to plan this. Long enough to tell Lila who he was. Long enough to give her this photo. But why hadn't she come herself? Who was chasing her? And how the hell did this all tie back to him? He opened a drawer in the motel dresser. Found the motel notepad and began to write. Emma R., my sister, presumed missing, 8 years ago. Last seen, after I deployed. No signs of drugs, crime. Vanished, family accepted it. Lila equals her child. Why find me now? His pen stuttered to a stop. One line circled itself in his mind. She said you'd remember. But he didn't. Not all of it. Not why Emma had that photo. Not why she trusted him with this. And not why someone was trying to bury all of it. That afternoon, the motel phone rang once. Then silence. No voicemail. No call Idaho. He unplugged it. An hour later, a car slowed as it passed the window. Older sedan. Tinted windows. Didn't stop. But it didn't feel random. He began packing. Blanket. Formula. Locket. Flashlight. Backup drive. Then paused. Looked at Lila. And said it aloud. I think someone erased her. I think someone wanted her gone. She didn't answer. Just reached for his dog tags around his neck. Tugged them gently. Like she knew what they meant. Like she'd seen them before. That night, he called a favor. An old buddy. Ex-military. Now worked for child services in another state. Off the record, he said, voice low. I need information on a girl named Lila. Mother's name might be Emma Reed. Anything you can find. There was a pause on the line. Then, Jesus. That name's been sealed tight for years, man. Way above my clearance. He felt his blood chill. Can you get it? A breath. I'll try. He hung up. And stared at the motel door. Because whatever was behind it, wasn't just about a missing sister. It was about a child born into silence. A soldier who forgot something he wasn't supposed to. And a locket that held a photo someone wanted to erase. Lila slept again. One hand gripping the photo inside the locket. And just before her eyes closed, she whispered one more thing. She said, if you remember, you'll come find her. The soldier sat in the dark. And for the first time in years, he was afraid to remember. By dawn, the sky was the color of unspoken guilt, pale, heavy, waiting. The soldier hadn't slept. He just sat by the window, the curtain pulled slightly back, watching the parking lot like a man expecting ghosts. Lila was curled into the pillow. The locket still in her hand. Her hair a tangled halo around her face. He sipped cold coffee, bitter and burnt. His notebook was open on the nightstand, pages filled with scattered names, timelines, and arrows that went nowhere. At the center, Emma Reed. A ghost in her own story. His contact came through around 7:40 a.m. A secure email. Password protected. No subject line. He waited a full minute before opening it. Inside was a single scanned file, Reed, Lila, adoption application, case ID 61123. He opened the PDF. The air in the room shifted. Lila's name. Her date of birth. Mother, Emma L. Reed. Then his eyes froze on the next line. Child registered for private domestic placement, status, pre-adoptive. Parental rights signed under duress, witness notes sealed. His stomach turned. The form wasn't old. It was dated only 2 months ago. Emma hadn't vanished 8 years ago. She'd been found. Or cornered. And someone had tried to take Lila from her, legally. He kept scrolling. Scanned documents, forms, court copies, agency emails. Names redacted, signatures blurred. But there was one name, partially legible, in a forwarded email trail. Client, Grace Holdings / Placement Expedite, Tier 3. He leaned back, heart pounding. Grace Holdings. He'd heard that name. Private contractor. Defense adjacent. Known for border operations, logistics, and unofficial relocations. They didn't place children. They moved assets. And if they were involved in Lila's file, then this wasn't adoption. It was removal. He tried calling his contact. No answer. Tried again. Voicemail. The silence on the other end sounded like a warning. Lila woke slowly, blinking at the ceiling like she didn't quite remember where she was. Her hand searched blindly until it found the locket. Only then did her breathing settle. He knelt beside her. Do you remember a place with big fences? Or a building with bright lights? She nodded, sleepy. Did anyone try to take you away from your mom? She looked away. Then whispered, she screamed. The words hit like glass. She screamed, and they gave me medicine. Then we ran. Tears welled in her eyes but didn't fall. Not yet. She said no one would believe her. 'Cause papers make things true. He stepped into the bathroom. Closed the door. Turned on the sink. And let himself feel it. His hands gripped the edge of the counter. Face lowered. Breathing hard. Papers make things true. He had seen it too many times. False reports. Misfiled deaths. Lost missions. A line on a page could vanish a person. Emma had been made to sign her child away. Under duress. Then she'd run. And now she was gone. He called a second contact. Someone deeper in military intel. Need to know what Grace Holdings does off the record, he said. Why? Because I think they're stealing children. A pause. Then, give me a day. He didn't have a day. He decided to drive. He needed to see something. To feel it in his hands. He headed toward the town where Emma had last lived. A rural district 2 hours away. No big highways. Lots of silence. Lila sat in the back seat, buckled in, watching the road like it might remember something before she could. They passed fields. Closed gas stations. A billboard half-faded, advertising the Grace Family Foundation, protecting the innocent. He clenched the wheel. Same name. Same shadow. The address from the file led to a white office building, too clean, too quiet. He parked across the street. Watched. A young couple walked out of the front doors holding a baby carrier. Smiling. Laughing. The receptionist inside smiled warmly. Clipboard in hand. He approached, Lila in his arms. Can I help you? She asked. I'm looking for someone who handles placement files. Case ID 61123. Her smile flickered. I'm sorry. We can't share information with non-clients. He leaned in. I'm her uncle. Her file says her mother's rights were signed under duress. I want a copy. She stiffened. I'm sorry. That information is sealed. He nodded slowly. Then walked away. But not before seeing the nameplate on the desk behind her. Diane Harlow, Grace Holdings liaison officer. That night, back at the motel, Lila finally cried. Not loud. Not wailing. Just soft, shaking tears while sitting on the floor with a coloring book he'd picked up from a gas station. A house. A woman. A child. All drawn in pink crayon. He sat beside her. Said nothing. When she finished, she handed him the page. At the bottom, in big uneven letters. Not gone. Hiding. He looked at her. At the steadiness in her eyes. The quiet defiance. And for the first time, he felt it clearly. This wasn't about rescuing Lila. This was about finding Emma. Because she didn't run. She tried. And someone made her disappear, on paper first, then for real. The sun dipped low behind rusted silos as the soldier turned down a road that didn't exist on GPS. No street signs. Just a memory. A name Emma had once whispered late at night over a shared soda on the roof: if I ever disappear, check the places that were never really mine. It was the last place listed on her file, a women's shelter deep in farmland, closed 3 years ago after a fire. He found it exactly where it wasn't supposed to be. Half burned. Collapsed in places. Roof gone. Black scorch marks trailing up the walls like a ghost had screamed and left its fingerprints. He parked in silence. Lila stayed in the truck. She seemed to know, instinctively, that some places were meant to be walked alone. He stepped through the ash-covered entryway. The smell still lingered: smoke, damp rot, something older than fire. Papers crackled under his boots. Photographs curled in the debris. Children's names on cracked cubbies. A forgotten shoe in the hallway. He found her room by luck, or maybe something else. Room 4C. Half the door was gone, split down the middle. Inside, charred walls and melted plastic told the story of heat too fast to run from. But in the far corner, near the warped floorboard, was a glint. He stepped over broken furniture and reached down. A tin box. Rusted at the seams. Wedged deep between the floorboards, blackened but intact. He pried it loose. Inside, folded papers. Letters. Dozens of them. He sat cross-legged on the floor and opened the first. I'm writing this in case no one listens when I scream. His name is James. He was kind once. But he's not anymore. They say I'm unstable. That I can't keep Lila. But I see how they look at her. Like she's not a person. Like she's property. I think they plan to sell her. He kept reading. Each letter was dated. Stamped in shaky handwriting. Some written with trembling lines, others smudged as though tears had bled the ink. One hit harder than the rest. I tried contacting my brother. But he's overseas. If anything happens, and he ever comes back, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I never meant to vanish. I had to choose between screaming or surviving. Her name is Lila. And she doesn't cry unless I leave the room. She knows more than she should. The letters painted a quiet war. Emma had lived under assumed names. Shelters. Church basements. Always running. She'd learned of the fake adoption ring. The paperwork forged under Grace Holdings. Children taken from women deemed unfit by a system paid to decide it. Her resistance made her dangerous. So they painted her as unstable. Unfit. They erased her. And Lila was next. He sat there for a long time, the box open, the pages scattered around him like ashes. He remembered her laugh. The way Emma used to braid string into his wrist before deployment, said it was her armor. She never believed he'd need saving. But now, she'd screamed into pages no one had read, and buried them where she knew he'd look if he still loved her. And he did. God, he did. He drove back in silence. Lila watched him from the back seat, her eyes wide. Like she felt the shift in him. When they reached the motel, he placed the box on the bed and let her look inside. She didn't touch the letters. She just stared at them. Then whispered, she used to write every night. He turned to her, stunned. You remember? Lila nodded. She said if she disappeared, the papers would still know her. She pointed at one folded page near the top. She read that one to me. He opened it. And read. Lila, if you find him, if he finds you, don't be afraid. He was always the brave one. The stubborn one. He believes in people. He just forgets to believe in himself. Tell him I forgive him. For not being there. For not remembering me. This isn't his fault. But it is his fight now. He didn't sleep that night. He copied every letter. Every page. He stored scans in 3 different drives. Sent digital copies to encrypted emails. Stashed the originals inside the lining of his duffel bag. He called no one. Not yet. Some stories needed to be carried, not told. At least not until the weight of them broke the silence wide open. In the final letter, undated, hastily written in red ink on notebook paper, Emma's words changed. They're closing in. Lila knows the rhythm now. 3 taps means run. She remembers the rules. No light. No noise. No names. If you're reading this, then I'm either gone, or I had to disappear on purpose. I didn't run. I tried. That morning, Lila tapped the bed 3 times. Then pointed to the window. A black car sat parked across the street. Engine off. Windows up. Motionless. But not empty. The soldier didn't speak. Just pulled Lila close. And whispered the words Emma wrote. This is my fight now. He loaded the car. Left room 23B. And didn't look back. Because Emma had screamed in silence for too long. And now. Now he was going to answer. He drove all night, following backroads that stitched together forgotten counties. No music. No stops longer than 10 minutes. The silence between him and Lila thickened, but not with fear, with focus. She stayed alert. Awake. She didn't cry. Didn't ask where they were going. When the soldier finally spoke, it wasn't to comfort her. It was to say, I think I used to know the men who are trying to erase you. And she nodded. Like she already knew. By dawn, he reached the edge of a city large enough to be anonymous. He used a fake name to rent a week-to-week studio apartment near the rail yard. Cash only. No ID. The walls were thin, but the corners were shadowed, just the way he needed them. He set Lila up with paper and crayons on the floor while he booted his old military laptop. Password, unfinished. The files came slow. Glitchy. Dusty with disuse. He started digging through the archives he wasn't supposed to have kept. Discharge records. Overseas contractors. Private security firm contracts. Names came first. Then faces. Then rage. The first hit was a man named Colin Sharp. Years ago, Colin had been part of their unit's supply management division. He was sharp. Too sharp. Always one step ahead of protocol. Transferred mid-tour to a private logistics firm after a family emergency took him stateside. Grace Holdings. His photo sat atop a spreadsheet of procurement chains. Military surplus. Vehicle mods. Humanitarian escort assignments. Next came Raphael Brenner. A name the soldier hadn't heard since Afghanistan. Now listed as Director of Domestic Outreach for Grace Holdings. His face was grayer now. Thinner. But the eyes were the same, the kind that didn't flinch when orders changed mid-mission. He clicked open Raphael's recent public appearances. Photos with city officials. One of them was the mayor from the town where Emma's last known shelter burned. They smiled like men with full plates and clean hands. Lila's crayon rolled toward his foot. He picked it up absently and set it back. Then noticed her drawing. Not flowers. Not stick figures. Buildings. Big, square, windowless. Fences. Security cameras. She pointed to the middle building. There. He crouched beside her. There what? They wanted me to sleep there. Before we ran. The architecture was too specific to be imagined. Do you remember where it is? She tapped the corner of the page. A sign. She had scribbled words that only made sense to someone who had stared at them in fear. St. Mercer Recovery. He felt a chill. That wasn't an orphanage. It was a former rehab facility turned private intake center. Grace Holdings had recently acquired it for youth therapeutic services. But no kids ever came out of it. He returned to his laptop and pulled up public licensing records. St. Mercer Recovery, purchased by Grace Holdings LLC, 2 years ago. Now a registered foster placement transition home. Yet, no reports filed. No registered children. No adoption outcomes. No therapists. But the utilities were still on. The budget kept increasing. And 3 different employees were former military. All dishonorably discharged. Including one name he could barely read without shaking. Captain Daniel Rusk. His old CO. His mentor. The man who used to say, sometimes, the mission isn't about right and wrong. It's about who gets to decide. He stood, pacing now. Lila watched him from the floor, hugging the blanket Emma had wrapped her in that night in the rain. He was starting to see it clearly. Grace Holdings wasn't just cleaning up a system. They were using it. Identifying vulnerable mothers. Framing them as unfit. Legally erasing them. Then replacing the children, at a profit. With Emma, they'd pushed too hard. She knew too much. And she didn't run. She resisted. And when resistance didn't work, she found him. He clicked open the final folder on his drive. One he hadn't opened in years. After Action Report, Northern Zone, Domestic Unrest Drill. Inside were pictures of civilian evacuation simulations. One stood out. A woman being led into a black van. Struggling. Silhouetted by floodlights. Her face pixelated. But her body language. He zoomed in on the soldier escorting her. The posture. The walk. It was him. From a decade ago. He had escorted a woman who looked just like Emma into a van, under orders. No memory. No context. No name. But the file said it all. Subject 511, non-compliant. Status, transferred. Follow-up, not applicable. He staggered back. Memory clicked. The feel of her hand on his wrist. The way she whispered his name, not his rank, as they loaded her in. He hadn't remembered it until now. He was the last person to see Emma before she vanished. He was the one who let them take her. That night, he sat on the fire escape with his head in his hands. Lila came out quietly, her little fingers wrapped around a cup of warm water. She set it beside him. And said, "You didn't know." He looked at her. Eyes red. "No. But I should have." She sat beside him. Leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know now," she whispered. And that was it. No forgiveness. Just the truth. Inside, the laptop glowed. Faces of men who wore his same uniform once. Now wearing suits. Smiles. The same hands that once saved lives now used contracts instead of weapons. And in the corner of the screen, Emma's photo, grainy, fading, hidden in a box of terminated transfers. But not forgotten. Not by Lila. Not by him. Not anymore. He opened a new folder. Titled it, Proof They Tried to Erase Her. And began to fill it. The rain returned like a breath held too long. Not heavy, just steady. A curtain between the world and its sins. Inside the apartment, the soldier scanned files like a man chasing shadows, until something cracked through the noise, a sound that didn't belong. A faint echo. A voice, small and mechanical, playing from Lila's corner of the room. She sat cross-legged, staring at a cheap baby monitor he'd picked up at a roadside store. One with a memory feature he hadn't bothered to explore. Now it was lit up. Playback light flashing red. He walked over, slow. His fingers trembled as he turned the volume up. The recording was choppy, distorted. But the voices, clear enough to chill bone. First, a woman's whisper. Tired. Tense. Lila, if I'm not here tomorrow, remember the rules. No names. No light. No noise. Emma. His chest tightened. Then another voice. Male. Smug. She's flagged. Priority red. Sell the kid, move the mother. A pause. Then laughter. Hell, we'll save more if we skip her area altogether. No one checks Zone D. Silence. A thump. Then Emma again, barely a breath. I'm going to get you out. Then static. And nothing. The soldier sat on the floor, breath gone, lungs refusing to believe what they'd heard. He hit replay. Again. And again. The same line, that same final whisper. Sell the kid, move the mother. Lila watched him. She didn't flinch. She had heard it before. I listened to it every night, she said. So I wouldn't forget. His eyes met hers. Do you know who said it? She shook her head. But Mommy said he had a scar near his ear. Like a line. The soldier's jaw clenched. He knew that scar. He'd seen it on Raphael Brenner, the man from the files. The one now leading Grace Holdings' outreach programs. He wasn't just administration. He was on site. He exported the recording, encrypted it, uploaded it to 3 clouds. He sent a copy to his Intel contact, subject line, "This is not a drill." He included only one message. Find out how many kids were skipped in Zone D. Lila fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket too big for her, the baby monitor now dark beside her. But her drawing had changed. No longer houses and fences. Now she drew circles. Lines. Names. One name stood out, spelled in soft, backwards letters. Mom. And beside it, help. He stared at it. Then stood. Because this wasn't just proof. This was witness testimony. The next day, his Intel contact called. Urgently. You were right, the voice said. Zone D doesn't officially exist. What do you mean? There's no deployment record, no shelter count, no evac list. It's a blank quadrant on the map. But resources were allocated to it. How many kids? Unknown. But satellite scans show 5 transport vehicles entered. None exited. The soldier closed his eyes. How do we prove it? You just did, his contact replied. That recording, that's going to spark something. He ended the call. Turned toward the window. Watched the rain fall on the city that didn't know a war was coming. Then he played the tape one last time. Emma's voice again. Lila, if I'm not here tomorrow. He whispered to the silence. You will be. I swear it. That night, he sent the file to a local journalist. Not just the audio. But the drawings. The adoption forms. The contracts. The photos. All of it. He included a caption. This child is real. Her mother didn't run. You decide if this silence continues. Then he turned off the lights. And waited for the storm he knew was coming. Lila stirred once in the night. You're going to stop them, right? She asked, eyes still half closed. He nodded. I'll stop them. She turned over. And whispered. She said you would. The monitor clicked. A light blinked. The recording began again. Soft. Slow. Like a prayer stitched through static. The soldier didn't stop it. He let it play. Let it haunt. Because sometimes truth arrives not with noise, but with a whisper someone dared to record. The base hadn't changed. Same barbed wire curled like question marks above the fence. Same security checkpoint with guards pretending not to remember old faces. But the soldier saw the cracks now, the wear behind the rehearsed salutes, the fatigue behind the forced order. He drove in slow. Lila wasn't with him this time. She was safe, left with a trusted friend in a remote farmhouse, a place where even shadows forgot how to follow. He carried only a duffel bag, the note in his chest pocket, the flash drive in his boot. He was no longer returning as a soldier. He was returning as a witness. And maybe, an executioner of silence. The reception desk looked up, startled. "Sir, you're not scheduled. I need 5 minutes with Captain Rusk." "He doesn't take unscheduled. He'll take me." His voice was quiet, but final. The receptionist froze. Then picked up the phone. "Room 3C, she said, not meeting his eyes. "He's waiting." Captain Daniel Rusk's office was just as the soldier remembered, painfully tidy. Flags and commendations lined the walls like a curated lie. Rusk stood when he entered, arms folded behind his back. "Well. If it isn't the prodigal ghost." "No small talk," the soldier replied. "Just answers." Rusk sat back down. "Careful, son. You're not in uniform anymore." "I'm not here as a soldier." A long pause. Then Rusk smiled. That same sharp smile he'd worn when justifying civilian displacement protocols. "I figured you'd come eventually." "She said you would." The soldier's blood froze. "You knew she reached me?" Rusk nodded. "We let her. Briefly. We needed to see what she'd do. And what you'd remember." The soldier stepped closer. "Why?" he hissed. "Because we lost control of her. She started asking the wrong questions. Got people soft. But she never broke. Not even when we flagged her as unstable." The soldier dropped the flash drive on the desk. "Here's what I do remember. Your voice. Her scream. 5 transports in Zone D that never came back." Rusk didn't even blink. "You can't win this. You think one girl's drawing and some audio is going to bring down all this?" The soldier stepped in close, his shadow over Rusk's desk. "Not alone." Then he leaned in. Voice low. "But I'm not alone." He left without waiting for a reply. Walked through the base like it wasn't sacred anymore. Men and women glanced at him with curiosity, some with fear. He didn't care. In the parking lot, his phone buzzed. A message from the journalist. "We're running the story tonight. Prime time. You need to watch this." Back in the safe house, Lila was waiting. Sitting by the window with a blanket around her. She turned when he walked in. Didn't smile. Just looked at him, long and quiet. "You saw him?" He nodded. "Was he scared?" Another pause. Then. "Not yet." That night, the television lit up the dark room. The headline across the bottom. "The Baby in the Rain, Whistleblower Soldier Breaks Silence on Corrupt Adoption Network." The journalist spoke gently, like truth deserved reverence. Photos faded in and out. The locket. The drawings. The audio. Emma's voice, "I tried." Then. Lila's face. Blurred. But present. She was real. Unforgotten. The phone rang. It was Rusk. "You think that's going to scare us?" "No," the soldier said calmly. "But it's going to find her." Rusk went quiet. "You buried her." But stories like this, they don't stay quiet. Someone's going to talk. Someone's going to remember. He hung up before Rusk could answer. Later, after Lila had fallen asleep beside the glowing screen, the soldier opened the drawer. Inside, Emma's last letter. If you come back here, don't let them make you into silence. Lila is watching. And so am I. He stepped outside, rain on his shoulders like forgiveness. The world was watching now. And the base? It would burn. But not with fire. With truth. The story moved faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the broadcast, the internet exploded, not with outrage, but with disbelief. Denial, then anger, then a slow, rising tidal wave of grief. The baby in the rain became a trending phrase. People watched the segment on loop, the locket glinting in the soldier's hand, the blurred image of a wide-eyed child clutching drawings of fences and windows, the audio clip of a man laughing about skipping Zone D. News anchors used words like systemic, disturbing, deeply troubling. But none of them could look into the camera the way Lila had looked at him, and known. The soldier watched it all from the shadows of the safe house. Lila curled on the couch beside him, a blanket over her knees, headphones playing soft music that didn't reach him. He didn't want her to see how the world reacted. Not yet. Let her draw. Let her hum off-key lullabies her mother once sang. Let her be a child for just a moment longer. Because the fire had started. And it wasn't going out. The mayor from Emma's town released a statement that evening. This is a baseless conspiracy built on falsified documents. Our public offices have nothing to hide. But people were already looking. Volunteers from neighboring counties started digging into missing persons records. Parents began asking questions about expedited adoptions. Former foster workers shared anonymous tips. And then came the tipping point. A whistleblower, a clerk from Grace Holdings, emailed the journalist with internal spreadsheets. A list. Over 300 names. Labeled as unfit placement removals. Under the column, status, resettled. No follow-up required. Zone D wasn't just Emma's story. It was a mass grave of silence. The journalist ran a second story. Bigger. Angrier. And this time, they didn't blur the child's face. They asked. What kind of country lets a child disappear into paperwork? Threats started. The soldier received anonymous texts. You've said enough. You're endangering the child. Walk away while you can. He traced the origin to a burner phone in a decommissioned Grace Holdings office. He didn't flinch. Didn't respond. But he loaded his weapon that night and slept near the door. Lila curled up near the bed, cradling her locket like it was still warm from Emma's hand. The next morning, a rally formed outside City Hall. Dozens of parents, holding photos of lost children. Placards read. They were never unfit. Zone D exists. Where is Emma Reed? The soldier watched from a live stream, heart pounding. Not just because they believed her. But because they remembered her. He opened his email. The subject line read. You did this. Attached was a photo. Emma. From a distance. Blurry. Grainy. Alive. Standing at what looked like a supply depot, maybe a warehouse. Her face partially turned. Her posture hunched. But unmistakable. Underneath, a single line. They moved her. 2 weeks ago. Alive. In containment. J. No full name. No sender. Just a whisper from the dark. But it was enough. He printed the photo. Showed it to Lila. She stared at it. Not with joy. Not even relief. Just a long, steady recognition. She's not safe, Lila said quietly. No, he agreed. But she's alive. She nodded. Then reached for her crayons. And drew a map. That evening, another email arrived. This time from the FBI. We're opening a case file. We need your statement. And the girl. He knew what that meant. Protection. Paperwork. Testimony. But he also knew what came with it. Loss of control. Bureaucracy. Delays. Emma didn't have time for delays. He called the journalist. Tell your audience something for me. What? That this doesn't end with exposure. It ends with someone coming back. He could hear the excitement in the reporter's voice. But the soldier's tone stayed steady. This isn't a victory, he said. It's a starting line. He closed the laptop. Turned to Lila. Pack a bag, he said gently. We're not hiding anymore. She didn't ask where they were going. She just grabbed the locket, her blanket, and a small box of crayons. Then followed him out the door. The safehouse door clicked shut behind them. And in the dark, quiet street, a single car waited. Headlights off. Watching. They moved fast. They always do, when silence stops working. The soldier sensed them before he saw them, a flicker in the shadows, the sharp hum of tires over gravel, too slow to be casual, too soft to be safe. Lila was already by the door, blanket in hand, locket tucked beneath her collar like a heartbeat. He didn't have to tell her to run. She just waited for the signal. Tap. Tap, tap. He threw the duffel over one shoulder, flashlight in his teeth, sidearm drawn. The apartment light stayed off, he knew better than to give them a silhouette. Outside, the street was empty. Too empty. No headlights. No dogs barking. No voices. Just the sound of a world holding its breath. They exited through the back stairwell. Rusted, slick from the mist. Lila clung to the railing with one hand, the soldier's shirt with the other. He knew the alley like a muscle memory. 2 steps to the left, one pause to check reflections in the puddles, then past the dumpsters. Then he saw it. The car. Engine idling. Windows blacked out. And the door, slowly opening. He pushed Lila behind him. Go, he whispered. The river trail. Like we planned. She didn't argue. Just ran. Small steps. Soft shoes. Vanishing into fog. The figure stepped out of the car, tall, broad, coat too clean for a night like this. Turn the girl in, the voice said. Calm. Cold. You don't want this. The soldier aimed without blinking. You think I didn't train for this? He growled. No, the figure replied. We trained you for this. Then came the flash. The gunfire echoed once, then stopped. The soldier rolled, returned fire, ducked behind the rusted garbage bin. 2 more figures flanked from the side street. Coordinated. Not cops. Not amateurs. Grace Holdings. Cleaners. He didn't aim to kill. He aimed to stop. A shot to the leg. A shoulder. A warning. This wasn't war. But it was close enough to remember how to survive one. Lila's trail led into the woods, just as they rehearsed. She had memorized the sound of his boots. The whistle pattern. She would only stop when she heard him call her name twice. Not once. Not 3 times. Twice. He ran. Blood smeared his sleeve, not his. Boots slammed wet earth. Branches clawed his arms. By the time he reached the riverbank, moonlight cracked through the fog. The water rushed like a secret, fast and invisible. He saw her silhouette first. Still. Waiting. Exactly where they'd agreed. She looked up when she heard his steps. Eyes wide. Tears streaking down her cheeks, not from fear, but from holding it all in too long. They were going to take me again, she whispered. He dropped to his knees, pulled her in. They didn't. And they won't. She touched his cheek. You got hurt. I've been hurt worse. They crossed the river barefoot, water up to their thighs, freezing. She didn't complain. Didn't cry. She just kept the locket close. At the other bank, he pulled a bundle from beneath the roots, dry clothes, another map, a flashlight. He wrapped her in his jacket. She leaned against him. Are you scared? She asked. He paused. Then nodded. Yes. She nodded back. Okay. Me too. At the new shelter, a barn-turned-safe house by a contact who owed him more than money, they dried off by a rusted stove. He bandaged the cut on his arm. She watched him quietly. Then asked, why do they want me? He didn't lie. Because you remember. She looked down. I wish I didn't. He took her hand. No, he whispered. Your memory is what's going to end this. In the morning, they woke to a knock. 3 times. Not the pattern. He tensed. Opened the door slowly. It was the journalist. Eyes wide. Pale. Breathless. You need to see this. He handed over a newspaper. Front page, FBI confirms investigation into adoption fraud network, whistleblowers evidence verified. Then a photo. Lila's drawing. And below it, have you seen this woman? Emma. Alive. Still missing. But no longer hidden. The journalist looked at them. We can protect her now, he said. We can offer safety. The soldier shook his head. Not yet. He looked down at Lila. She was tracing a new drawing. A girl in a field. A woman in the distance. Hands reaching. The soldier knew what it meant. She saw Emma. She believed they were getting close. And so did he. That night, as wind scraped the barn walls and silence settled again, he said one thing before they slept. Next time they come, we don't run. Lila nodded once. Eyes open in the dark. And whispered. We remember. Dawn came cold. Not harsh, not violent, just cold. A stillness that pressed on the skin like the weight of waiting. Inside the barn, light crept between the slats of wood, thin gold lines tracing across dust and silence. The soldier was already awake, seated against the wall, his sidearm in his lap. He hadn't slept, not truly. Lila stirred beside him, wrapped in layers of blankets and a quiet too old for her age. Her hand was on the locket. As always. Then came the sound. 3 soft knocks. Not a threat. Not the pattern of the ones who hunted. Just a human rhythm. Polite. Hopeful. He stood without sound, motioning Lila to stay hidden. She didn't cry. Didn't protest. She simply nodded and melted into the hay-lined shadows. The door creaked as he opened it slowly, heart thudding like the baseboard of a long-lost home. A woman stood there. Mid-30s. Wind-burned coat. Messenger bag slung tight against her shoulder. Press credentials pinned like armor. She looked at him like she already knew too much. I'm with the Bureau, she said softly. In coordination with the DOJ. I came alone. He didn't move. How'd you find us? She pulled out a phone. Showed a photo. Emma. Blurred security footage. Warehouse timestamped 3 days ago. She's alive. Confirmed. Held in a private transit facility under Grace Holdings. We're moving in. But we need the girl. A pause. I mean, we need her safe. We can offer full protective custody, guardianship papers, legal witnesses. Everything. He didn't answer. He just opened the door wider. Lila stepped forward. The agent knelt down, slowly. Eyes level. Not forced. You must be Lila. Lila didn't speak. But she nodded once. And then. She reached into her coat. Pulled out the drawing she'd been working on. Handed it to the agent. A picture of a woman behind glass. And the words in shaky letters. She didn't run. They left that afternoon. Not in a squad car. Not in handcuffs. But in a black SUV with tinted windows and 3 separate IDs signed and sealed. They were driven to a safe facility 2 states over, guarded not by men in suits, but by mothers in plain clothes and teachers with steel in their eyes. Lila was given her own room. A warm meal. Books. Paper. Silence that didn't feel like punishment. The soldier sat with 2 agents. He told them everything. The motel. The base. The locket. The audio. The file marked terminated. They recorded it all. Then they asked the question. Are you willing to testify? He looked through the glass into the next room, Lila asleep on a couch, hands still curled around that chain. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. But this isn't about justice anymore. They looked confused. He clarified. It's about finding her. The next day, Emma's status changed. No longer a potential threat. No longer a missing subject. Now officially. Victim. Protected witness. Mother. The raid was planned. Quiet. Precise. But they needed one final confirmation. So they brought Lila into a private room. Showed her a still frame. A blurred figure sitting in a holding cell. Lila stepped forward. Placed a hand on the glass. Then said, for the first time in front of strangers. That's her. The room fell silent. The agents glanced at one another. Then nodded. It was time. The soldier was granted temporary guardianship that same evening. He stood in front of a federal judge, hand over his heart, locket chain wrapped around his wrist, as he promised to protect the girl he had once held in a storm. She stood beside him, in a little gray sweater, boots too big, eyes steady. When the judge asked, "Do you feel safe with him?" she looked up. Then smiled. Just a little. I do. Later, alone, she asked him. Is she scared? He knew who she meant. I don't think she's scared anymore, he said. Because of us? Because of you. That night, he received one more message. From an unlisted number. They won't give her up easily. You've made enemies. Be ready. He read it once. Deleted it. Then stepped into Lila's room, where she was already asleep beneath a soft yellow light. On her bedside table, her newest drawing. A house. A sun. A path leading to 2 figures, one tall, one small. And a third waiting near the door. He didn't cry. He just sat on the floor beside her bed. Back against the wall. And whispered. We're almost there, Emma. Just hold on. And in that moment, across whatever distance remained, he hoped she could hear him. The courtroom was silent. Not from fear, from gravity. Like the air itself had thickened to hold everything together. Wooden pews groaned beneath journalists, families, and strangers who now felt like neighbors to Emma's pain. The walls were high. The windows narrow. And at the center of it all, the long wooden table where truth had come to stand trial. The soldier sat near the front. Dressed clean, pressed shirt, back straight. His dog tags hidden beneath the collar, but he could feel their weight, not metal, but memory. Beside him, Lila. Wearing a dress she chose herself. Yellow. Her mother's favorite color. Her hair combed back. Her hands folded. Her eyes, unblinking. The trial had already made headlines for weeks. Private security firm accused of child relocation fraud. Zone D whistleblower takes the stand. Mother once declared unfit, now declared survivor. But here, now, it wasn't about headlines. It was about the moment when silence either swallowed the truth, or released it. The judge entered. The doors locked. And the defense began to speak. They used words like national interest and protocol under crisis. They used numbers to explain away faces. Charts instead of names. But the jury didn't move. And neither did Lila. Then came the soldier's testimony. He rose without being asked twice. Took the stand. Spoke low. Measured. No theatrics. I was trained to follow orders. To protect. But somewhere along the line, protecting meant forgetting. He paused. Looked toward the audience. My sister didn't disappear. She was removed. By people who wear suits instead of uniforms. Who mark children as losses and inventory. He held up the locket. This is all she had left to give her daughter. This, and the truth. The prosecutor nodded. Then asked the final question. Do you recognize any of the defendants? He looked at them one by one. Captain Daniel Rusk. Raphael Brenner. The woman from Grace Holdings who signed the falsified adoption papers. I recognize all of them, he said. They trained me to obey. And I'm standing here because I finally didn't. The courtroom held its breath. Then came Lila's moment. The prosecutor approached gently. We understand Lila would like to share something today. No words. Just a drawing. Lila stood. Walked forward with careful steps. Handed the judge a sheet of paper. A house. A child. A woman in the window. And behind them, shadows. A fence. And a man with a badge holding a pen. The judge stared at it longer than anyone expected. Then looked at Lila. You drew this yourself? She nodded. Then said, just above a whisper. They said we were just numbers. The gallery broke. Tears. Gasps. A mother sobbing in the back row. The defendants shifted uncomfortably. Even the court stenographer paused. Then came the final witness. Emma. Escorted in with security flanking both sides. Thin. Pale. But upright. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on her daughter. And everything else fell away. She took the stand. Voice shaking. But clear. They tried to erase me. Not with violence, with ink. With papers. With signatures. She held up the original note she'd written. The one left with Lila. They didn't break me. They just hid me. But my daughter, she brought me back. The defense didn't cross-examine. There was nothing left to twist. The truth had landed. And its echo was too loud to ignore. The verdict came after only 3 hours. Guilty. Fraud. Negligence. Endangerment. Conspiracy. The crowd didn't cheer. There was no applause. Just silence. The kind that follows something sacred. Afterward, in the hallway, reporters waited with flashes and questions. Lila didn't stop. She walked with Emma on one side, the soldier on the other. Through the exit doors, into the light. Outside, a child ran up to Lila, holding a drawing. "Mine looks like yours," she said. Lila smiled. "For real this time." Held the girl's hand. That evening, the soldier sat with Emma on a park bench, watching Lila and the other children play beneath the slow fall of golden leaves. He handed her the locket. "You kept it," she said. "I needed to." She opened it. Looked at the photo inside. Her younger self. His younger self. And whispered, "We were just kids." "But you were brave," he replied. "No," she said. Lila was brave. "I just followed her lead." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Emma said, barely audible, "Thank you for remembering me." He didn't answer. He just nodded. Because some truths don't need repeating. They just need to be witnessed. A year later, the world moved on. It always does. News cycles faded. Trials were archived. Names forgotten by strangers who once gasped in disbelief. But in a quiet town by a lake, where pine trees whispered to one another and the wind softened at the windows, a man and a girl built something that didn't fade. He opened the center on a Tuesday. Not a grand opening. No ribbon, no applause. Just a wooden sign hammered into the grass with steady hands. The Guardian's House, handwritten beneath a hand-painted symbol, a child's hand in an open palm. It wasn't a shelter. It was a promise. A space for safety. For story. For healing. Lila helped him hang the map that first day. Not a real one. Not one printed by government cartographers or colored with borders. It was a child's drawing, hers. Homes drawn where there had once been silence. Roads where children had been erased. In the bottom corner, a line written in red crayon. Nowhere is outside the rescue zone. They never told people what happened unless they asked. And even then, only the pieces that mattered. The center welcomed kids who flinched at doorbells, who asked if bedtime meant alone, who carried toys like shields. He taught them how to listen. How to read maps. How to hide if they had to, but how to come out of hiding, too. He never called it training. Just remembering. Emma came every Sunday. She brought books, snacks, and warmth stitched into the fabric of her scarf. She still carried scars beneath her sleeves, not all visible. But she smiled more now. And when Lila laughed, Emma cried sometimes. Quietly. As if tears were a form of worship. One afternoon, a boy arrived. 8 years old. Wouldn't speak. Carried a broken action figure and nothing else. The soldier sat with him for an hour without saying a word. Then he tapped once on the table. Paused. Then again. Tap, 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 tap. The boy looked up. And for the first time, nodded. That night, Lila found the soldier sitting on the porch. Staring at the lake, where the sky poured gold into the water like a memory returned. She sat beside him. "You ever miss the old life?" she asked. He smiled. "I don't remember the old life. Just the waiting." She leaned against his arm. "I don't wait anymore," she whispered. He looked at her. Stronger now. A scar on her knee from falling off a bike. A scab healing on her palm from climbing too high in a tree. A child. But something else too. A survivor. And something more. A witness. Inside the center, pinned beside the locket, hung the first note Emma ever wrote. "She didn't cry unless I left the room." And beside it, a new note. Written in Lila's handwriting. "I don't cry when he's here." In the mornings, he walked the grounds. Checked locks, fixed squeaky hinges. Refilled the pantry. And in the afternoons, he taught the kids how to read trail signs, how to find safe routes, how to speak with their eyes when words won't come. Some called him Coach. Others just said, Sir. But Lila, she called him by what mattered most. Guardian. The world still spun. Courts still forgot names. Systems still bent under pressure. But here, in this pocket of sky and earth, the story held. Not just Emma's. Not just Lila's. But all the ones still waiting to be rescued. One day, a letter came in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photograph. Emma. The soldier. Lila. Standing in front of the center. Below it, in small handwriting. Thank you for saving me. He stared at it a long time. Then added it to the wall. Not beside the evidence. But beneath the word they'd all learned to live by. Found. That night, Lila sat at the table, coloring a new picture. He glanced over. What is it this time? He asked. She held it up. A map again. But this one was different. The roads all connected. The houses glowed yellow. In the center, one word. Home. He looked at her. Really looked. The girl once handed to him in the rain, silent, watching, waiting. Now smiling. Trusting. Whole. And he whispered the only words he had left. She saved me first.